The fastest way to pressure quarterbacks is right up the middle, right into their face. For this interior defensive line class, are there enough prospects that can do that? Yes. And we'll let you know who they are next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. My national scout over with the Draft Network, as well as the host of the Locked On Clemson Tiger podcast. And as always, man, we appreciate y'all and thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. Every day, Monday through Friday, tapping in with us, being our family, but our every single day is we love and appreciate y'all. But as always, man, I can't do anything championship related without my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. And you can find and follow him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man, and 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. But you know why we're here, right? We're here to bring you championship level content. Myself, Damian Parsons, surrounded the NFL draft 24/7, 365. We're still going into the summer, man. And DP, we're in a special part, right? Because we're into that scouting notebook. A couple days ago, we made the transition to the defensive side of the football. And now we're talking about the big nasties, right? Those interior defensive linemen, the position that Aaron Donald has made. I guess you can say it's a sexy position now, right? Everybody wants those high caliber interior defensive linemen. You have guys like Jeffrey Simmons getting paid a lot of money. You have Chris Jones leading defenses from the interior defensive line position. So it's a must that we get into this class, DP. And this 2024 class is a rather interesting class because I see the scouting notebook, right? And it's who is ideal one. And opposite of what last year was, everyone knew Jalen Carter was the best defensive tackle heading into the college football season. I don't think anyone knows yet, right? Like there's some big names out there, but we're still trying to figure out who's that best defensive line prospect, who's that guy that could potentially go top 10. So let's get into this discussion, DB, and start this thing off. First of all, foremost, who is the best interior defensive lineman in this class as you have done your work through your scouting for the summer?
I'm gonna tell you, Keith, I think it's tough, man, because it's hard to pinpoint one, but I believe when it's all said and done, ideal one is going to be a Tiger, whether it's an LSU Tiger or a Clemson Tiger. I think it's going to be one of those two, man. And for me, it's between Maason Smith and Ruke Orhorhoro. And, Ruke is like, he's a little different than his teammate Tyler Davis. You know what I'm saying? But like the way that they're used, Ruke is dense build, strong, can anchor in the run game. But there's so much growth for him as a pass rusher, and he's versatile. They put him at DN, kind of 5 tech. They put him out, they kick him out kind of the 6 tech, 7 tech, outside shoulder of the tackle, over there with the tight ends. Then they reduce him down to 1. They put him at 2I, 3, 4. They move him all over the place, man. Even some 0 tech. So, like, when you talk about getting those pass rushing packages and you put him as the quote unquote nose tackle to rush upfield. But I think when you look at when we look at tools, right, bet on traits, I think that's Maason Smith, man. He's got the size, the body, right, and the power and the athleticism. And I think it was back in 2021, I believe it was, the year before he got hurt. It was a Kentucky game. And I can't remember. I think I was watching one of their offensive linemen, and he was an absolute monster, right? He was almost unblockable. And I was like, who is this guy? And I looked him up, and I think he was a freshman at the time. And I was like, well, this is a young kid doing all this on the defensive line, but he's a big boy athlete. I think he's probably going to be the top guy just because of all the stuff you can't teach, man. The size, the power, and like I said, to have that surprising athleticism that he has, to be able to exchange gaps and handle the reach blocks and defeat those, and being able to get into the backfield, create quick pressure, and getting vertical plays with a good motor from what I've seen back in 2021, because, of course, he was hurt in 2022. he got hurt celebrating in after a sack or something
Yeah,
like that.
it was celebrating a teammate. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't
That's
quite
right.
the situation with, was that the Detroit Lions player that was like doing the discount double check and
I
towards
I think
ATL?
so. Yeah.
You know, it was more so him celebrating a teammate, and he ran over there, jumped in the air, and then towards ACL in the very first game of the season against Florida State. And obviously he was missed. I so it I almost want to have questions, right? Like just with this interior defensive line class and then what we're looking for, right? Because what Maason Smith, and that's just what these, the class period is like, okay, what do you value more in the interior defensive lineman? That's almost the question, right? Because we know that Maason Smith has the athleticism, right? I just think that there's more to be pulled out and to figure out because
Yeah.
athleticism works, right? But we always talk about teams running the football, and then there's a high percentage chance that you're going to take on double teams. So I need to know how strong you are at the point of attack, right? Can you physically overwhelm interior defensive linemen? And that's the part where I'm like, okay, that answer needs to be kind of spoken on. And obviously with the injury, it was tough because there just wasn't much film. And then even his freshman year, like you said, it might have been that game against Kentucky, but there wasn't a full season of him starting too. You know what I'm saying? Because there were other
Right.
interior defensive linemen. So it is such a projection right now that I think is tough for me. But I agree, like when you're talking about where are the traits, right? The traits are with Maason Smith, Ruke Orhorhoro. I think that's how you say his name. And the
Yeah.
traits are there with those guys. But I think with Maason, we still, we just gotta have to watch more film. We have to see him. And obviously, me being in the Baton Rouge area, right? I see a lot of clips of him and things like that surface on Twitter, and it appears that he's fully healthy. So, you're talking about week one. Once again, they play Florida State this time in Orlando, right? And so you're going to be able to see him in a high level matchup, and I think he's going to be able to create that momentum early on if he's interior defensive line one.
And the crazy thing about it, Keith, when looking at this class, as we talked off air, like I was doing a deep dive into, just watching multiple defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen yesterday and last night. And one thing I kind of realized, all the guys that are closer to the top of this class, all of them were kind of like spot starters. They had veterans in front of them, so they
Yeah,
didn't get the
it's
full
weird. Yeah.
workload. So I was like I thought it was just like, okay, yeah, you got, Tyler Davis was, guy, but Ruke, you still had, of course, Tyler Davis and Brian Brzee was still there and stuff like that. So it was like, all right. And then you get into a couple of other guys, and I'm like, wait a minute, man, this seems like a theme. Like a lot of these guys are they're really talented, but it's like we don't have a full season on them as starters, right? Where offensive coordinators can game plan how to block them specifically because they know that you're going to be on the field 85 to 90% of the snaps, on the defensive line, to where now that's going to be the biggest thing for these young kids. But I'm going to tell you, man, like Ruke, I think I said this on the Clemson pod, that Ruke has the higher ceiling than Tyler Davis. Now, one of my guys, talked about Tyler Davis, and he's like, man, he reminds me a lot of Grady Jarrett. And I was like, if he hits Grady Jarrett's ceiling like that, you got yourself one of the perennial best interior defensive linemen in football. But Ruke is a guy that I think there's so much meat left on the bone for this young man to grow into a legitimate player. Strength, point of attack, run game. He can collapse the pocket. And he's shown flashes of pass rush moves, being able to, the shoulder fakes, head fakes, double hand swipes, half man technique, reducing and limiting the surface area of what offensive linemen can land their punches on and get hands on him. But like that, his power can be overwhelming at times when he gets that one-on-one. The main thing for me is, and I've noticed this too, Keith, if you agree with me, I think Maason Smith may be the biggest out of most of these guys. A lot of these other guys are more of the 3-tech interior, like, those single gap penetrators, rather than, okay, we got, like last year, we had a lot of nose tackles. You know what I'm saying? Keanu Benton, Maason Smith, Gerard Clark. We had a lot of big body guys last year. It seems like this is more of a pass rushing group.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And that's going to kind of, I guess it'll be tail of the tape, right? Like, how do we kind of project these guys and what do we want? And that's what I talked about, kind of playing a run versus rushing the passer, right? What do you want in your interior defensive lineman? Because that is going to be how this is going to grade out, and potentially how the rest of this class is as far as the theme for this class. So coming up next, DP, I think it's safe to say, right, if we're talking interior defensive line one, can we say that the jury's still out, right? Like we have a couple guys at the very top, but naming interior defensive line one is premature for what we do, right? Like there is no interior defensive lineman one, because there's a lot of guys that still have to play a lot of football. But when we talk about tier 2 guys, DP, there's some guys that names need to be mentioned, right? Even with this, we talked about the Maason Smiths and the Rukes, but there's not a lot of conversation about the rest of these guys that have a true opportunity for like a Maason Smith to rise into the first round, right? So I want to get into these tier 2 interior defensive linemen coming up next.
Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire every week, we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the up-and-coming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. When on the clock with the first overall pick in 2023 fantasy drafts, it's okay to get downright giddy about doing the gritty. That means picking Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson. He is a guaranteed fit. Over the past 2 seasons, Jefferson has led the league in both receptions and receiving yards. He will remain a dominant number 1 and target monster. Jefferson is a guaranteed fit to ignite the rest of your fantasy football lineup toward winning success. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternator shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the very first time. So go forth, switch those gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Tier 2 interior defensive lineman, guys. A lot of these names, we may fast forward to January, and these guys are being that IDL 1 discussion, and it's a bigger group. But I'm going to tell you, man, Keith, Michael Hall Jr. from Ohio State. Ohio State has 2. They got
you got
2
an opportunity to watch him. I'm interested to see what you say about him.
Michael Hall Jr., the first thing, like I think he's like 290, 6'2", 6'3", like 290, 295. So he's more of they play him all over the place. They play him similar to Ruke. They play him at some 0, some 1, reduced inside. I think he's a single gap penetrator, attacking style, vertical penetration style defensive tackle, man. This is a guy that has arm length. He has the functional and play strength to collapse the pocket with just bull rushes and power, but you see the quick hands, right? Like the club along the long arm over, the swim move. He's got a little bit of a shimmy, tries to get a little Euro step going. I'm like, all right, big fella, I see you. I see you out here trying to throw some things at these interior offensive linemen. He's not a guy that I want handling double teams, play after play after play. And that's just something that we see in college football, right? When I was watching, I thought back to like Perrion Winfrey, where Oklahoma, Alex Grinch, the DC there at the time, had him playing 0 tech, and he's like 290, 300 pounds, right? And he's like, then you see him at the Senior Bowl in single gap situations as a 3 tech, and it's like, oh, we can't block this guy. You know what I mean? As a pass rusher, he's got really good upside, right? So I think that's why I look at what Michael Hall Jr. is that I don't want to reduce that 0 tech and 1 and 2-eye, even though he's shown flashes of being able to get you out of a pinch there. I think his best ball going forward is putting him at that 3-tech interior defensive line, just letting them go one-on-one with guards and let him continue to develop. And I think the big thing for him too is he showcases the ability to collapse the pocket, but he's got to consistently get better with his hands in terms of his punches and timing them and landing them the correct way. Because like even when he does throw that double hand swipe sometimes and some of these more advanced moves, they don't always land and then he gets stuck. So it's like, okay, if you could time it better, and you know what I'm saying, to where when that interior offensive lineman shoots his hands and then that double hand swipe lands, boom, now you just cleared him, you lock his hip, and now you're clearing past him and getting right into the face of the quarterback. So I think he is he's got a higher ceiling, really talented kid. But I'm gonna tell you something, Keith. If there's we use the word freak a lot, you know, and I think we use it too much with prospects. His teammate, Tyleik Williams, 6'3".
I've seen flashes of Tyleik. Yeah.
Listen, this dude, hey man, this is a different style cat, bro. 6'3", 6'4". So I think he's about 315. But oh no, he moves so much different. You talking about playing with a high motor? Like coaches love. Well, I'm pretty sure their defensive line and defensive coaches love this kid. There's plays where he's backside defender, he gets into the backfield, runs going to the opposite perimeter, and he chases the ball down to make devastating hits. And you know he plays with his hair on fire. And you see, and for a big guy that is about 315, he's got a quick first step too, explosive first step off the ball. And you know what I mean, similar to with Hall. Like they both can that drive phase coming off the ball, they keep their shoulders low and then get into you, and that's when they make their move. And he feels like a guy that I think this year, like Hall, he's supposed to. I'm expecting him to be the full-time starter. This is a name that should absolutely rise because he's big, he was somebody, athletic, he's got long arms.
Yeah, I didn't know if you got to him because I caught flashes of him, and I felt the same. Like everywhere you found, I'm like, hold on, like this is a dude. Then I thought about him, like. This Ohio State defensive line is crazy, right? Like it should be one of the best. Like you have two interior defensive linemen, so you can't say that you're soft, right? And Tyleik Williams and Michael Hall. And then the pass rushers, right? When we talked about Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, we talked about them yesterday, right? And it's the same thing that now that they're full-time starters, let's see what they can do. You know what I'm saying? And so this shout out to this Ohio State defensive line because, I mean, that's going to change some things. And we'll get into our college football kind of predictions based off of prospects, right? Later into this process, probably end of August. But that's going to determine if I may choose them to win the Big Ten or the national championship, this defensive line. So I agree, DP. When I watched this defensive line, I was like, man, okay, like y'all have two interior defensive linemen and Tyleik. And if you say Tyleik has the higher motor, it's going to appear that you're saying that Michael Hall doesn't have a high motor.
Right.
Michael Hall still has a high motor. It's just that Tyleik is just wired. He's wired
a little different.
One of those guys that you may concern about.
You don't expect to see a guy that big to hustle the way he hustles. It's like basketball, right? When you see a big center running the floor on fast break, all big centers don't do that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what when you see a guy that's going to go baseline to baseline, full speed, you appreciate that. When you see a guy like Tyleik Williams and his size and what he brings to the table, you see him attack and attack nonstop. Like he does not. One of the we talk about this with interior offensive line, like active hands. He throws punches. He's a repeat puncher. His hands are firing at like 100 miles a minute, it feels like. Because if he doesn't land the right way or the way he wants to land, okay, I'm gonna reset. I'm gonna throw another, and I'm gonna throw another. And you just love those things, man. Same thing with Michael Hall. These guys play with high motors, and they're really tough to block, especially one-on-one.
Yeah, I agree, man. The Ohio State defense line is going to be crazy this year. Definitely, all four of those guys watch them because they have potential to be first-round guys, and that's crazy in itself. But DP, I know we talked about tier 2. I want to kind of talk about a guy that I don't think is in tier 2, but a name that's been popular. I don't know if it's just popular, the Draft Network, or I just feel like I see his name a lot, and that's Florida State's defensive lineman, Fabian Lovett. Watched him in comparison to the rest of these guys, and I just don't know if he's on that caliber, right? Like good football player, I think that there's growth there. There's stuff that he can do to move his game forward, right? And on the surface, there are things to like. But like we said, man, we mentioned Tyleik, you mentioned Michael Hall. There's still, we're gonna get into a couple other guys. I'm just not sure that he's on that level, right? And we're talking about our scouting notebook, right? Like we scout, we talk about the good, but we also have to talk about the room for improvements or things that we see that we disagree with. And I wanted to just kind of drop that in there with Fabian Lovett, that watching the rest of these guys now, I'm like, okay, I think that, it's just, he may just be a tier down, right? Like maybe not even tier 2, maybe he's a tier 3 guy that can fill a specific role for you, but he still has another season to play. And there's a reason why he came back. And like I said, man, you week 1, Florida, all eyes are going to be on Florida State. Week 1, you have LSU. You got to play Clemson. You're supposed to be ACC champions, right? Like so he has some big time moments to make some plays and kind of, elevate his game.
No, 100%. That's a name that has been talked about a lot, and being a guy that is kind of polarizing because people expect him to. They had another Florida State defensive tackle a couple years ago that came out that was it Marvin Wilson? I think is his name.
Yeah. Yep.
That he 1 year he had a great season, and this kind of speaks to when we talked about with TDN a couple months ago about like Olu Fashanu. You brought up the point of you strike while the iron is hot. Like if your name is buzzing as a first round pick, you take it. And I remember that 1 year, Marvin Wilson was like, a lot of people view him as a top defensive tackle in college football. And I think he went back to school, and that next year, the production dropped. His name did not buzz or ring for anything. And then I don't even know. I really don't know where he is now. I think he went undrafted. So it's like, I think, and that's it's just crazy that they have another kind of hyped up prospect again that has to finally answer the bell if he's as good as the hype has been, man. But that's a good name pull for Fabian Lovett. Like he's, like you said, and even though we're talking about tier 2 and tier defensive lineman, the fact that you talk about him, like you don't believe he is in it, he's more tier 3, someone that should be late day 2, early day 3 type of prospect, but he's got the chance to rise and fix his stock if he goes out there in these big games and balls out, because their schedule is tough. Their schedule is tough.
They got to play some football, man. They got to play some football, man. So coming up next, man, you scout notebook. You know what time it is. It's becoming my favorite segment, probably because of DP's intro, right? Like he gets excited over this, man. But we're going to talk about these sleepers, and these sleepers, we probably have about 10, 15 names to rattle off. We've had this one, we kind of had discussions inside of telling y'all, exactly who's in our scouting notebook, but we have these names to rattle off, man. There's some Big 12 defensive linemen. There's some SEC guys that we got to talk about. So coming up next, man, we're going to get into these interior defensive linemen, these sleepers that you have to know.
Let me introduce you guys to Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make me look and feel good. I believe they'll do the same thing for you. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg to give you a truly sculpted look. And it feels great after all the time you spent in the gym doing leg day. Their shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon's, but they fit way better. Not only do they fit way better than Lululemon, but also those regular shorts that you have in your closet that's made out of that stiff restricting cotton, yeah, they're better than those as well. Why are they better? Because they use a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but the stretch gives you a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And guys, you're going to love the anti-stinking, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, especially in the summertime months. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter the promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your next order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your next order. You will not want to take off your Bird Dogs, we promise you. It's time to wake up, family. You already know what time it is, man. We got to wake up. That alarm is going off for these sleepers at the interior defensive line. And Keith, I don't know. I think you've had Miami for TDN in the past, if I remember correctly. They have a guy, Leonard Taylor, that I got my eyes on last night, and he just fits the bill of what a lot of these, the body type, get like the strengths, stuff like that. It's very similar. Like these guys are they're not many polar opposites in this class. Like I said, the 2024 class to 2023 are polar opposites, because this class to me has more of the pass rushing upside and ceiling. compared to last year.
You know what I was wondering? You know, like in basketball, the NBA, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the big guys is more of a trend to know how to dribble and to shoot threes. You know, like that. That's the thing. Like the big guys, they got to know how to dribble up the court and then shoot threes. Like it started, back with like Dirk Nowitzki shooting threes, and then now it's like transcended to like every 7-footer. You know what I'm saying? Like even like Brooke Lopez reinventing his game to be able to
Right.
shoot threes, right? Like how like that's the thing now, and like playing in the post is kind of a thing, but you have to shoot threes, right? I thought about this with the interior defensive lineman. Like, is the trend being able to rush the passer, right? Because it's just like I agree with you. We talked about it earlier in the podcast that there's so many of these guys, and you can start with Leonard Taylor that you like, good athlete, fluid hips, smooth mover, can rush the passer, and then you just put a question mark next to stopping the run, right? Like you just put a question mark. Like I think they can do it. They look like they can do it, but I know for sure that they can rush the passer from the interior defensive line position.
No, 100%. And that's where it is. Because like I said, when I watched him, I was like, oh man, like the quickness, the power that he was able to play with. Looks like he got functional arm length in his wingspan. A guy that really that Miami defensive line has, like, because they got an edge rusher who kind of plays some inside as well. I think it's like 99 or 95 is his jersey number. It's Akeem. I can't pronounce the last name, but they got some players over there. Is the U back? Who knows? But the point is, they got some players over there, man, especially for the NFL draft. And Leonard Taylor, I think I don't hear his name enough, Keith. And that's why I put him in the sleeper, because it's not a name that I hear talked about, but I think that's a name that we should discuss. And that Miami's going to have a slate of games. They're going to have the opportunities against Clemson, pretty sure Florida State, probably Duke and North Carolina as well. Leonard Taylor's going to have the spotlight on him to go out there and be a dude. And if he becomes a dude, this interior defensive line class, man, it could be something. It could be much better than what meets the eye right now in the summer.
Yeah, definitely could turn up. All right, DP, I'm going to head to the Big 12, man. I'm going to go with Gabe Hall-Bell, interior defensive line, 6'6", 295 pounds. Like I said, 6'6", 295 pounds. This is a fluid mover, man. This is a fluid mover, good athlete, well-proportioned guy, and just he can play ball, right? Like sack production was there for interior defensive lineman. I think he did 6 sacks in 2021, 4.5 in 2022. So obviously he can rush the passer. You see good pursuit, right? Like he's physical in his play, right? Like he can be strong at the point of attack, but it's also still a question mark because he is 6'6". Like, okay, make sure you keep that pad level down, right? So you don't get driven off of the football. And then there will be questions about Big 12 and them with the just playing along the line, right? Like in their line play and the big guys and stuff like that. But this is definitely a guy that can play some football, man. And he's a sleeper that nobody's talking about. Nobody's talking about the Baylor defensive tackle. I think we've seen him in maybe one mock draft. But the hype, I think there's hype there, and I think there's potential for him to fulfill the hype because of what he can do. And I mean, you just don't know, right? Because we've seen Tyree Wilson and we've mentioned our concerns about Tyree Wilson on this very podcast, and Tyree Wilson still went top 10. And now you have that question like, hey, if Tyree Wilson went top 10, could Gabe Hall do it?
Right. No, 100%. I got to stick with the ACC here, and then I'm going to travel to the SEC. Dwayne Carter from Duke, 6'3", 298. In the last 2 seasons, just looking from a number standpoint, 12 sacks, 11 QB hits, 66 pressures and hurries, and 6 forced fumbles. This is a guy very similar to the Leonard Taylors, the Tyler Davis, the Ruke, all these, Michael Hall Jr., body type similar too. So like I said, 298, 300, more of a 3-tech that you want rushing the passer. I think he's solid in the run game, but his bread is going to be buttered, getting after the quarterback and collapsing the pocket. And he's a guy that I've been trying to tell Clemson fans, listen, you better block this guy week 1. Because if not, Cade's gonna be on he's gonna be on Cade's heels. Cade's gonna be on the run all game, and you don't want that because this is a very, very disruptive player. But Keith, to switch the gears to the body type, over at Georgia, Nazir Stackhouse, like 6'2", 6'3",
This is how is it? Because we know we're looking for Alabama. I mean, not I said Alabama. I'm going to talk about an Alabama guy, a Georgia interior defensive lineman. Like what? Because right, it's been Jordan Davis, then it was Jalen Carter. So the natural question is, who's next?
I think he's up next. Like he's a talented dude, plays nose tackle, but they put him in the A and B gaps. powerful against the run. And I think there is a little something for him, in terms of attacking downhill and getting into the face of the quarterback. But he's a guy that's going to make linebackers' jobs easier, right? One of those guys is going to be able to two gap. He's going to be able to keep your linebackers clean because he's got that big, wide frame and stature that where, hey, because we know that defensive tackles are asked to do multiple things, but Georgia has their style. Hey, contain and plug running lanes. And he does a good job of that, right? Because then you lead the Smile Mundins and these other younger linebackers to flow to the football and get downhill and make plays and work freely. So I think that's what his value is mostly going to be at. I want to see more from him as a pass rusher, just in general. 11 hurries, no sacks, only has one in the last 2 years. But a guy that he's more of the run defender out of this defensive line class. Where a lot of these other guys, their bread is butter more passive or rushing the passer.
Right. Okay, cool. And I already hinted at it, right? So I'm going to talk about an Alabama defensive lineman, and that's Alabama interior defensive lineman Timothy Smith. And it's kind of similar to what you said about Nazir Stackhouse, and obviously you think about Alabama, Georgia, similar defensive schemes, and they recruit, right, similar players and what they want along the defensive front. This is a heavy-handed, big, strong, powerful guy. That has the potential to two gap, right? He plays that zero tech. He can play one. He can play three. He can play, that 4-eye and the odd front. So he can do a bunch of different things. It's just a matter of how high is he going to go. Now, listen, the sack production is not there for Timothy Smith, right? And you're going to circle that and be like, okay, well, how high can he go? Well, look, for Darian Mathis went back into the second round, third round. Yeah. Byron Young, right after him, went back into the second, third round, I believe. So the question is that some teams, while sometimes being different will benefit you, right? Because you're the rare commodity, and maybe it may flip on itself, right? To where these pass rushing defensive tackles, is so many of them that the run stopping defensive tackles are going to be more coveted. And DP, before we cut off, we've one name forgot to mention, and that was Jazir Newton from Illinois. Yeah, like very powerful. And this guy should probably be in the tier 2, headed into tier 1, because we're talking about one of those run stopping guys. He definitely has that ability.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, because I forgot to jot him down. So I was looking at my notes and completely forgot about bro. But yeah, he's one of those, another attacking style. Yeah, a dude that can get after the quarterback, got the athleticism and everything else, man. But
he may be one of the more complete guys that can do both, right? Like, because he's powerful at the point of attack, but he also athletic enough to where he can get upfield.
No, I think Kalijah Cansey is going to help a lot of these guys out, because I think most of these guys are bigger than him. You know what I mean? So it's like, him going first round, Maason Smith's going to help the Timothy Smith and Nazir Stackhouses of the world, being those big kind of run stuffers that can get into that first, second round range of the NFL draft. You just got to go out there and handle your business and showcase your skill set. But guys, go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it's available. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every single day. Y'all already know what time it is. We appreciate y'all for being our family and our every single days. And Keith, you already know Monday. What's coming back Monday? Mock Draft Monday. Get ready for it. Monday. We got a nice spicy one that we're gonna get into and have some fun with and break it down. Picks 1 through 10, all the way to 32, giving you our biggest takeaways. But in terms of Twitter, for Keith Sanchez, you can find and follow him at The Talent Code. Me, Damian Parson. Find and follow me, DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again on Monday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.